was they engaged with some of the major human rights NGOs. They engaged with Amnesty and they engaged with Human Rights Watch in quite open discussion. And they said, let us discuss this dilemma with you. Is it better for us to withdraw completely from the whole of Sudan because there is a major problem in Darfur, and this means that poor communities in Sudan, as soon anyway, have the infrastructure, a grid for it, or can we use our corporate ability to try, as business leaders, in our contacts with government, to say, we are very worried about the reputation of Sudan in Darfur. We're business leaders, but it is impacting on our work, but continue to work in Sudan. And in the light of that, it was decided that ABB should go back into Sudan, and what in fact was, they helped to establish in Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, a local network of the UN Global Compact. And that was kind of their responsibility, if you like, in continuing to do business in Sudan, to raise the profile of social responsibility. I want to refer to an African businessman who has impressed me greatly before I move on to my third strand about the work of the UN Special Representative. The African businessman, I'd say, is probably known by reputation to a number of you. He's from Sudan, as it happens, Mo Ibrahim. I got to know Mo Ibrahim a few years ago when he invited me to be a member of the board of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation and also the prize committee, which awards a major prize to presidents of African countries who serve well during their presidency, don't try to change the constitution, and leave constitutionally having contributed to progress of their countries. We've awarded 2 prizes, in fact. The first to former President Chissano of Mozambique for the work that he did at the time, and the second one to President Festus Mogae of Botswana. And we are still considering each year the possibility of prizes for the presidents who have stepped down within the previous 3 years. But perhaps more significant than the prize, which got a lot of media attention, is the Mo Ibrahim Index, which you can find on the website, and which I strongly commend to you as a reference point, because it's an index of all 53 governments in Africa, and it measures over a whole range of indicators: economic development, participation, human rights, rule of law, human welfare, tackling poverty, etc. But the reason that I wanted to mention it is, first of all, it's an example of an African businessman who made a great profit and a lot of money from the company Celtel International that he created to introduce cell phone technology into a number, I think into 14 African countries at an early stage in that cell phone development. And he did it very consciously, refusing to be involved in any corruption or bribery. And he built in a safeguard that any decision worth more than $30,000 had to be referred to the Distinguished International Board of Celtel International. And that very quickly dealt with any issues of people trying to influence or bribe or be corrupt. And when he sold out to the Kuwaitis, Mo Ibrahim became a billionaire who's now putting his money back into Africa with an investment fund and also this foundation. And we had an interesting discussion about 2 years ago. It was the launch of the third Mo Ibrahim Index, the Ibrahim Index, in South Africa. We've now had the 4th, and we're working on the 5th index, so you can really see the progress of countries. For example, a country like Liberia is coming up steadily in that index. Countries like Zimbabwe have been going down and are now beginning to just show a turn. So it's a very interesting index. And as we were launching it, a journalist asked Mo Ibrahim, said, now you're an African businessman. In this index, if you were a businessman looking at a country, which part of the index would you look at first and as being most important? And without hesitation, Mo Ibrahim said, I would look at the rule of law, participation and human rights. Not economic development or infrastructure, but rule of law and participation and protection of human rights, which I found interesting as a reflection of a businessman who has made a lot of profit in his life. So now I come to the third area that I felt was very relevant to our discussions in this conference, and that is the work that has been done under a formal mandate of the United Nations, a mandate on business and human rights, which was created and has been carried out by Professor John Ruggie. He's now a professor in Harvard University, but he was actually working in the United Nations together with Kofi Annan when I served as High Commissioner, so I know him for a long time and as a friend. His mandate as Special Representative was created in 2005 by what was then the UN Commission on Human Rights and is now the UN Human Rights Council, in order to move beyond what had been a long-standing and deeply divisive debate over the human rights responsibilities of companies. Professor Ruggie was appointed to the position by Kofi Annan, and his role was extended by the current Secretary-General, Ban Ki-moon. And Professor Ruggie's aim was to build meaningful consensus among all stakeholders about the roles and responsibilities of both states and corporations with regard to businesses' impacts on human rights. To achieve that consensus, he conducted extensive research and he convened consultations around the world. Out of that process came the UN framework, the Protect, Respect and Remedy framework, which was unanimously welcomed by the UN Human Rights Council in 2008. The threefold framework speaks about